When you say the Battle of Culloden, people will inevitably retort that it was the place that the Jacobite cause finally died. The last Jacobite hurrah. But that isn't strictly true. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. My guess is that if you're watching this, you've heard about the Battle of Culloden. But I thought I'd give a 2-sentence summary just in case you clicked expecting to see funny pictures of cats. The Stuart monarchs of Scotland, England and Ireland, but mainly Scotland, had been ousted, and Scotland and England had been merged into one country. Now, in an attempt to unravel both these naughty balls of string, the Jacobite supporters of James Stewart had risen up against the new monarchs, now the Hanoverians, on several occasions. The son of the exiled would-be monarch had landed in the Highlands, raised an army and taken them to within spitting distance of London before a double agent persuaded them to turn back, and it all climaxed on Drumossie Moor with the last pitched battle in a British Civil War. Unless you count the Rammy and Aarhus at Christmas. Least said, soonest mended. With defeat at the Battle of Culloden, you might think that that was the end of it. Indeed, as the title suggests, Culloden's normally seen as the last hurrah of the Jacobite cause. But I recently met with renowned Jacobite historian Murray Pittock, and he's the author of the book Culloden. If you want to understand the battle, you should definitely get his book. Anyway, Murray opened my eyes to something that I hadn't thought of, and he revealed what was the last hurrah of the Jacobites. As you drive down the A9 from Inverness to Perth, just outside Canusie, you'll see the ruins of Ruthven Barracks. Now, the barracks had been a power base from which the British Army had subdued the Highlands. The Jacobites had attempted to take it on the way south to Derby, and they'd succeeded on the way back north. After the disaster of Culloden, Highland clansmen gathered here with the intention of continuing the fight. When they sent a message to Bonnie Prince Charlie, the response they got was, "Every man for himself." Now you might think that this was Murray's revelation and the real end to Jacobitism, but no, I already knew about that. There followed gory executions and then the inhumane and barbaric suppression of the Highlands, state-sanctioned murder, arson and theft. But 6 years after Culloden, there was a plot by English Jacobites. Let me repeat that. By English Jacobites to restore the Stuarts to the throne. This Elibank plot is what I'd envisaged as the last hurrah for the Jacobite cause. But Murray Pittock changed my view. In fact, Murray caused me to reassess quite a few things in our conversation. We talked for over an hour, and if you're a Patreon member, then you can see our conversation on the Patreon page. If you're not already a Patreon member, then when this video's finished, you can come back and click the white tab up there to sign up. I'll leave a link in the description as well. But for the benefit of the non-patrons, I'm going to share just one of the insights that Murray gave. Now, I previously made a video called What They Don't Say About the Battle of Culloden. I'm going to leave a link to that video at the end, so please watch it. In it, I explained how the 1745 Jacobite uprising was one part of the wider European, indeed global struggle which involved the European powers fighting the War of the Spanish Succession, the War of the Quadruple Alliance and the War of the Austrian Succession. You might even have heard of the War of Jenkins' Ear, because he hasn't. When the last of those conflicts ended in 1748, nobody was really happy with the terms. So, hoping that this time they would get what they wanted, or at the very least get back what they'd lost, the warring parties realigned their allegiances, so that the Prussians took the side of the British and the Austrians and the Russians allied with France. And it all started over again. The British and the French started fighting with each other in North America. Now, our North American cousins will call this the French-Indian War. Then, on August the 29th, 1756, the Prussians invaded Saxony, starting the 7 Years' War. Obviously, they didn't call it the 7 Years' War at that point. That would have been silly. I mean, what if you got the dates wrong? It'd be like when the English and the French went to war in the 14th century. They called that the 100 Years' War, and then it ended up lasting 116 years. The guy that named that must have felt pretty stupid. Anyway, for the first 3 years or so, the whole thing was a bit of a stalemate. Then a guy called William Pitt took control on the British side. Basically, the strategy was to blockade the French ports, capture French ships at sea and send British troops to fight the French in the colonies. And this worked pretty well. Cutting off French trade damaged their economy, which made it difficult to fund their war efforts. It also meant that loads of French sailors had been captured, which made it damn near impossible for the French to fill battleship crews to regain control or break out of French ports. I'll be honest, the French were in a bit of a fix. In December 1758, a guy called the Duc de Choiseul became the French foreign minister, and he came up with a cunning wheeze. You see, the British were a naval power and had sent what land forces they had to the colonies. On the home front, they called up militia, who were led by a guy called Captain Mannering, based in Warmington-on-Sea. Should I explain that for the benefit of the internationals?
Don't tell him, Pike.
Okay. The point is that the French could just land forces in Great Britain, and if they could do that, they were pretty confident that they could win the war. And this became the main French strategy, and they set about building large transport ships to take a force of, I've seen numbers of up to 100,000 mentioned. You see, just 14 years earlier, when the Jacobites fought over this place, they'd nearly taken London with what started as a landing force of just 7 guys. So in February 1759, Bonnie Prince Charlie was called to Paris for a secret meeting where the French explained their strategy. Ultimately, it would be a pincer movement of invasion from the south and a landing in the Clyde estuary to raise a Jacobite force in Scotland. And when Britain was defeated, the Stuarts would be put back on the throne. They tell me that Bonnie Prince Charlie turned up late and drunk, which for a job interview is less than optimal. But what the French wanted wasn't the figurehead, but the fighting men. In 1745, Jacobite troops were desperately seeking French help to march on London. 14 years later, it was the other way round. The French continued their preparations. It was in June that they decided on the smaller landing in Scotland where the Duc de Guion would raise the Jacobite troops, and by midsummer 1759, in ports all along the Atlantic coast, there were hundreds of transport ships and around 50,000 troops ready to make sail. But the British blockade on French ports continued, and the number of French seamen that had been captured by the British Royal Navy in the Atlantic and elsewhere meant that the French Navy was almost 40% under capacity. Then in July, the British struck a further blow when a raid in the Normandy port of Le Havre damaged or destroyed part of the French fleet anchored there. The French realised they were going to have to adjust their plan. And at a council of war in Paris, they decided that the Scottish landing would come first, and once they'd gained that Jacobite support, then they would send a force to the south coast of England. After that, in August, the French Navy lost the Battle of Lagos off the Portuguese coast. Okay, so just Scotland then. Now, the obvious port from which to launch the invasion was Brest in Brittany, but a typhoid epidemic had killed 4,000 troops there, so the troops were assembled down the Brittany coast at Vannes in the sheltered Gulf of Morbihan off Quiberon Bay. If a French squadron could just break out from the British blockade at Brest to head down that coast, they could collect 17,000 troops there to make a landing on our shores. In early November, gale force winds struck the Atlantic seaboard, which sent all but the most rugged British ships back to their ports. On the 14th of November, the French squadron sailed out of Brest. They were sighted at various points by up to 4 different British ships which had stayed in the area despite the weather. But these were relatively small vessels, and the French ships initially gave chase before turning round in the gale to head down the coast to their intended destination. Fighting against that wind, it was the 19th of November before the French ships were slowing down off Belle-Isle with plans to reach dock at dawn. And that's when a squadron of British ships hoved into view. Realising that this wasn't the main British fleet, the French ships gave chase again, although as their vanguard chased the British squadron, their rear guard saw masts approaching from the distant west. The French stopped their pursuit and were in a bit of disarray as it became clear that the masts were in fact the main British fleet. What did they do? Retreat to the safety of labyrinthine coastal rocks and reefs? Or did they fight a larger force in storm-tossed open waters? Deciding that discretion was the better part of valour, and knowing that it would be madness for British to follow them into waters that they didn't know, the French headed for the security of a defensive position in Quiberon Bay. It was the next morning by the time the British arrived and did something not only unexpected, but downright dangerous. Admiral Hawke gave the order for chase full sail with the first 7 ships in line abreast despite weather, wave and murderous waters. By mid-afternoon, the French admiral was round the rocky Quiberon Peninsula as he heard cannon fire behind him. The British were starting to overtake the rear of the French fleet and engulf them. By 4 p.m, the French ship Formidable wasn't so formidable and it surrendered. It had been taken by the British ship Resolution, and it wasn't even New Year. Another French ship, Thésée, tried to turn, but it forgot to close the lower gun ports. As the water flowed into the lower decks, the ship capsized, leaving most of the crew dead. The Superbe also capsized and Hurrah surrendered. As the wind changed, the French ships all managed to get in each other's way somehow, and Hawke's daring pursuit had paid off. Several ships were wrecked, some, including the flagship of Vice Admiral Conflans, were grounded, and the crew set fire to them rather than have them fall into British hands, and a few managed to limp away to other French ports. But by the time the sun set on the 20th of November 1759, the British had won the most decisive victory of the 7 Years' War. Thus, they would create Canada, and large parts of the Americas would become British, at least for a few years. Britain would become the dominant global colonial power, and the French would reorganise its military, in particular its artillery corps, from which would emerge an officer called Napoleon Bonaparte. Prussia emerged from the war strengthened, and it would later lead the unification of Germany. But most importantly, for us, in November 1759, 13 and a half years after the Battle of Culloden, the last Jacobite hurrah had finally been roared. The Stuarts weren't coming back. For more information about how Culloden fitted into the wider European picture, why not watch my video, What They Don't Say About Culloden? It's coming up on screen now. In the meantime, ha' mi an dóchas go be lama alive. Cherry and Rasta.